and welcome to the Divorced Women's Guide podcast, where we talk about the things us divorcees are thinking, but not always talking about, as we turn our divorce into the best gift we've ever been given. And I do so with a little bit of sass and a whole lot of class. I am your host, Wendy Sterling, founder of the Divorce Rehab. I am here to support you in this transition phase of your life so you can start your new best chapter on your own terms. After all, that's what I did after my own divorce. And now it is my mission to change the conversation around divorce and help you see why your divorce, like mine, was the best gift you ever received. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. And today's topic was actually inspired by something I saw on the internet. I was looking for content actually to post in my private Facebook group, the Divorce Rehab. And I came across a quote that really stuck out to me. And I actually went into my private group and did a little talk about it. And I loved it so much. And I was getting so much positive feedback from my group that I decided to create a podcast episode all about it instead, or in addition to, I should say. And so the topic today is all around what closure means in divorce, what it really means, right? Because I think that we have a little bit of a misnomer around that, or at least I did. And I have to imagine that if I did, many of you did as well. So today I want to start out by reading you the quote that I read today that really resonated with me. And the quote was this: "Closure comes to us from within. It comes when we accept that letting go and moving forward is more important than remaining stuck in a situation that is no longer us with a person that is no longer us." And I like to actually ad-lib that last part and make it a little bit of my own by saying that remaining stuck in a situation that is no longer serving us with a person who no longer serves us. And what really resonated for me around that is, so I hear from so many people all the time about they just want to get unstuck, they just want to move forward. And a lot of that is rooted in our inability to find closure. And so when you think about closure in and of itself, closure, I actually have always thought that it's something that's like finite, right? Like you get closure and you're done. It's like a one-time thing. Well, it's actually not. After being, somebody who's gone through this process, it's not something that just stops, or it's like a one and done, you have it, you're done. It's a practice. So sit with that for a second, right? The reason that it's a practice is because in order to heal and to find and have closure, part of that process is all around you creating, identifying, and seeing different perspectives, having more clarity, right? And raising you to a new level of consciousness and awareness. And I think that that's really important. And again, is something that we don't necessarily think about a lot, right? Is that, closure is something we practice. It's something that we continue to do. It's something we get better at, right? And it creates new perspectives along the way. So what keeps us from finding closure? Well, here you go. Number one, and again, I talk about this all the time. I hear this all the time from my clients, right? Closure can be tricky. And the reason being it can be tricky is because how many of us are amazing storytellers? Raise your hand, say me, right? We are incredible at creating stories in our minds. Our minds are powerful, powerful tools that create story. And what those stories do is they actually wind up delaying our entire healing process. And it prevents us from also finding and and finally having the closure that we need. Closure's from within. So if your mind is creating stories, how can you have closure if your mind is constantly thinking? So let me ask you, what do the stories that you keep telling yourself, what are they? What are the stories you keep telling yourself? And then I want to ask you, when you tell yourself those stories, what does it create inside of you? What are the beliefs that you then have as a result? What are the feelings that are created from telling those stories? I can tell you what I've heard, right? It breeds worthlessness. It breeds insecurity. It breeds a feeling of uncertainty, inadequacy, and so many others. I'm sure you're listing out ones I haven't even said, right? So what that does is when you create those ideas, when you give into the fear of your story, what ends up happening is you perpetuate the story, which is a false narrative. It's not true. It's just what you've created. There's so many other perspectives, right? Closure is, with closure, right? You get to create, one step is having new perspective and getting closer to closure, right? So don't you want to change the narrative happening in your mind, right? And, you know, it's so incredible how powerful our minds are, right? From the storytelling aspect and also along the lines of like what you think you create. So if you're continuing that false narrative, you're living your life according to false narratives. It's not even the truth, but you've convinced yourself that it is. So what I believe is so important for us to stop, is number one, to stop those narratives, to understand when when it comes up, to be able to say, no more, I am not perpetuating this anymore. I am not going to believe this. I know that this is not true. Be able to identify it. Because when you're able to do that, the way that it plays into being able to move forward and to have closure or to begin the closure process is it enables you to start identifying who you are, right? Separating yourself from the false narrative, separating yourself from your inner critic, separating yourself from the fear, because you're letting it define you. So imagine what it would be like to not allow that to define you, to actually define yourself, your identity, your voice from a place of authenticity, from a place of truth. And this is some of the work that I do with my clients, right? Part of finding your identity, at least a big part for me and what I notice with my clients, is being able to identify those voices and knowing that they're not yours, and then moving into figuring out how it is that you can identify that voice, right? Knowing what that truth is. And part of the work that I do with my clients, and I know many of my colleagues do this work as well, is around values, right? And it's not about looking at a list and going, oh, check, 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 check. No, 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 no. We go really deep. I ask a lot of questions around being able to dig and identify what your values are that are way, way more resonant than just looking at a list. And so figuring out what your values are, also getting clear on your vision, right? There's so many of you who I've had calls with, or, if I haven't had a call with you yet, let's jump on a call, schedulewithwendy.com. But, so much of what I ask in these calls is around thinking about where it is that you want to go. And so many of you have no idea. And that's because we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to dream. We don't allow ourselves the opportunity because that false narrative is so freaking powerful. So imagine what it would be like to have somebody guiding you into that vision, to have somebody to help guide you into a place where you're thinking about your future instead of constantly looking at your past, right? Thank you, stories, right? The storyteller, the inner critic. And the other thing too is rediscovering what your interests are, right? That's part of knowing who it is that you are. What do you like again? I remember I had no idea No clue. Again, there's different ways that you can go about exploring and figuring out what that's all about. And that's what you get to do, because at the end of the day, that is how you're able to reinvent you. And you get to do it on your own terms, you guys. Hey, it's Wendy here. I wanted to take a quick break from the conversation to let you know about another free event I'm hosting on Tuesday, September 29th about divorce and narcissism. If you're somebody who is divorcing a narcissist or someone with narcissistic characteristics, this is something you don't want to miss. You will learn what you need to know before you divorce a narcissist, how to successfully negotiate with one, learn financial hacks, how to set boundaries and co-parent with a narcissist, and so much more. The event is free and it's live, and all you have to do is register today by visiting divorceandnarcissism.com. Again, the event is live on Tuesday, September 29th, so block your calendar today. And now let's jump back into the conversation. How many of you lost yourself in your marriage? How many of you look, to who you are now and go, I don't know who I am outside of him. I don't know who I am outside of the marriage. I don't know who I am outside of my children. How many of you guys are in that place too, right? I was in that place and it was awful. It was awful. And I vowed to never, ever, ever allow myself to get to that place again. And I know many of you feel the same way. You don't want to do that. Or perhaps you've been successful at not having that happen again. But again, this is part of the closure piece, is finding who you are and doing it on your own terms instead of through the lens of somebody else. And in order for us to really start thinking about who it is that we are, we have to start thinking about and having gratitude for the positives in our life, shining the light in the positive, right? How many of you spend your entire days, weeks, months, fixating yourselves on the negative? It's so much easier to focus on the negative. I think I read some statistic that of all the thoughts you have in a day, I think 70% of them are negative. It's really powerful, you guys. Think about that. We are so mean to ourselves. You would never talk to a friend the same way that you talk to yourself, right? And so when we're fixating on what it is that we did wrong, we're not allowing ourselves to have closure in our marriage, in our divorce, right? So what I encourage my clients to do, and what helped me in my healing process, was to start focusing on the positives in my life, right? Focusing on the positives and seeing the silver linings around the relationship and taking a learning from it, right? And accepting, and I know that's a big word for some of you, but accepting that what happened, and take it as a growth experience. Take it for how is it going to shift you moving forward, right? And one of the things I did recently in my letting go of fear challenge that I did in my Facebook group was learning how to take responsibility, learning what taking responsibility for your actions, for your thoughts, for your feelings looks like. Because if you're not taking responsibility for your part in your marriage falling apart, right, then you're not allowing yourself to actually move forward and start thinking about the future. Listen, I'm not proud of how I showed up in my marriage. There are things that I've had to take responsibility for that I am so not proud of, you guys. Not proud of at all. But you know what? While I wasn't admitting them to myself and taking responsibility, I was giving them power within me, right? Because I was filled. It was fueling the shame and the embarrassment that I had, instead of just acknowledging it and moving forward, knowing that I don't have to be that person anymore. Let alone, I don't have to be around somebody where that is a way that I decide to act, that I get to be around people that bring out the best in me, instead of continuing to stay in a relationship that wasn't serving me, that I wasn't able to be my best self, right? So now moving forward, I get to have a new partner. I get to be with somebody who is going to bring out the best in me, who isn't going to tear me down or make me feel the things that I don't ever want to feel again, right? And so what that enables you to do is to start growing, right? We're all learning. Every day there's something new to learn. Every day there's more growth that gets to happen. And you become more aware, right? We talked about this earlier, awareness, right? Having more awareness around where it is that you get to shift and make changes for the next go round, right? You don't want to perpetuate what you've been doing. Right? That's why the second divorce rate is so high, is because people aren't doing the work. People aren't taking responsibility and healing and working through their shit. So I encourage you guys to do that. And if you need support, ask for help. We are our own worst accountability partners. Ask for help. There's a lot of resources, and Lord knows you guys have heard a ton coming from me, right? So another thing that I also wanted to talk about as it relates to closure has to do with the fact that, how many of you, okay, and I'm so guilty of this, how many of you guys are sitting there going, well, if I could just have one more conversation, like I just need one more question answered, or why can't he just apologize, right? Or maybe you're saying like, God, why can't he just freaking man up? Like, why is it so hard for him, right? So let me ask you guys a serious question, okay? And I wish somebody asked me this, or maybe somebody did and I just don't remember. Maybe my coach did, which is why this is coming up. But let me ask you guys a question, okay? Is there any answer that would make the pain go away? Is it ever going to be enough, okay? Learn from my mistake, okay? I kept asking and digging and poking, thinking, oh, well, knowledge is power. No, not in a divorce. Okay. I thought one more answer, one more, way to dig to find stuff. And I'm just going to feel so much better. No, it didn't. It actually continued to pour salt in my wound. And it was perpetuating me living in my past, me living in the pain, me living in the story that I kept telling that I so badly wanted to come true, right? And so does that bring you closer to closure? You guys, hell no. No, it doesn't, right? I thought so. I thought it would. I am here to tell you it will not. It is not going to bring you closer to closure. It is going to keep you rooted in your past. So if you continue, you guys, to involve your ex, okay, in your need for closure, you are going to continue to focus not just on your past, but on your ex. When closure and you moving forward has everything to do with focusing on your future and you. Guys, it comes from within you. I said that at the top of the podcast, right? You cannot change your past. It is not possible. I hate to break it to you. And reliving that story on autopilot, on replay, is not serving you. It is not moving you forward. And you do have the power to change the story. You do have the power to shift, right? And it's okay to not have all the answers. You've got to let it go because it is keeping you rooted in your pain, right? So I encourage you guys to instead take all that energy that you're expelling in needing closure, needing your spouse to help you get there. It's bullshit. Okay, so take all of that energy and put it into you. Put it into you creating a life where you are thriving, where you are seeing how much better life is on the other side, right? Your divorce does not define you unless you let it. And I guarantee so many of you listening are letting it continue to define you. It doesn't get to define you, and society doesn't get to tell you that it defines you because you have to check a box on a medical form. Okay, I was actually just talking to my mom about this today, right? I was like, it's like, it drives me crazy how society shines such a light on us and it prevents us from healing. Let it go. I check the single box. Who the hell cares? You want to put me in a box? Wendy doesn't get put in a box, and neither do you guys. So to find closure, to start the closure process today, you guys, please, okay? Know that it is more important for you to think about your future than it is to stay stuck in your past, right? And it comes from within. I hope you guys got some value out of today's episode. I would love to hear your feedback. I always love hearing your feedback from my podcast episodes. It warms my heart. It supports me. It enables me to support you. What came up? What were your takeaways? Write to me. Write me back. I would love to hear. Wendy@wendysterling.net. And if you guys want to come into my private Facebook group, please feel free to do so. There's an amazing community that I have curated that I absolutely love and adore, and I pour my heart and soul into. It is the Divorce Rehab on Facebook. I hope you guys have a magical rest of your day. I send you tons of love, light, and joy. Mwah! I will talk to you guys on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this episode with someone you know or spread the word on social media. This is how I reach more divorcees around the world and provide them with the support they need to create their next best life. And I would also love to continue the conversation with you. So please friend me on Facebook, join my private Facebook group, The Divorce Rehab, and follow me on Instagram @Divorce Rehab with Wendy. I'll see you next time.